Yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today we've got a very special guest. His name is James Gibson. He's the founder of FitPro Financial. And I first bumped into James when we're speaking at the coaches convention event in Manchester. And then I had a few clients saying, "Yeah, I'm working with James. Oh, I'm working with James," and it kind of all kept leading back to this guy. And I've been meaning to get you're the first financial professional I've had on the podcast. I've been meaning to get someone on for a while, and all the feedback I've gotten, and James has been helping us out as well, and he's just been on it. Is he makes me feel safe, and we're going to talk a lot today about money mindset versus the numbers that you need to know, psychological safety. And also a little bit about James's story. But if you was going to have a FitPro Financial guy, if there was someone that's going to fill those shoes, it looks exactly like James. He's a big dude. He's been 2-time Mr. Ireland in bodybuilding, 1-time Mr. Northern Ireland. And I guess the right name for you would probably be the anabolic accountant.
That's the name that's floating around at the minute. It has been floating around since the start, and I think Joe Parrish would always refer to me as that, and it's just good fun.
So where did that journey start? Has it always been an accountancy that you started in? Is it always bodybuilding and those two just beautifully merged in together? Or run us through the story.
So I was always a very stubborn child when it came to like strength, and I still remember we live on a farm in Northern Ireland, and there was rather large stones in the fields, and I remember going into the field with my brother and my father, and them both attempting to move this large boulder out of the field so it didn't hurt any of the animals. Now, we didn't run the farm. My father's also a chartered accountant, but the two of them couldn't do it, so it's younger brother, you're not allowed to touch it. And we all went for dinner that evening, and of course younger brother decided to take himself off into the field and attempt to lift this stone and leave it at the front door and just say boom. So I'm a very, very stubborn person when it comes to doing things that other people say is not possible. So this industry in itself, with accountancy, as in the accountancy industry, I actually get all the time that's not, how do you do that? That's not possible. But with real-time information in the software that we have nowadays, it's fantastic. I stemmed from a rugby career throughout school. So started off with rugby, but because of my exam curriculum with the Chartered Accountants Ireland, it was on a Friday evening and a Saturday. So I had to swap my outlet to something else. And I had joined the weights club, which was a members only club back when I was 16 years old, just for strength training more than anything. And guys kept saying, strong man, be a strong man. And I don't mind saying this, but I was looking at the strong men and I was looking at the bodybuilders, and I was like, I maybe want to try out bodybuilding. So it took me a good number of years. I think 2014 was when I first competed, and that was it was originally WABA back in the day, and I placed third in the junior lineup for that. I then went on and done the UK BFF the following August 2015 and placed third at that. And I had sort of got myself in a sort of doubt at that stage that this isn't for me. I'm always going to place second or third. I'm always going to be top three, but that wasn't good enough for me. So it was either going to be give up or try harder. And I'd learned from the first two shows, I'm a problem solver. First show, I came in fat. There's no doubt about it. Second show, I came in 14 kilo lighter than the first show, but I looked very scrawny. So I tried to mesh the two mechanisms together and ended up winning the first ever PCA Ireland show that there was and becoming Mr. Ireland for that. And the day before, actually, I went back to the IBFA, the original stomping ground, because WABA converted to IBFA in 2014, placed third, but then entered the open category, won it, novice, open, and the overall. I ended up winning in the one show, and then the following day went and done the PCA. Then I tested the waters across in Birmingham. I went to PCA, Body Power was hosting PCA's show, and I got beat by two absolutely phenomenal bodybuilders, Randy and Chris Jones, who both went on to become professional bodybuilders. So even looking at that, you can sort of say you can take that one on the chin. But I do know I went into that show thinking, oh, I'm great. I can cheat on my diet because I won 2 overalls the year before. But you know yourself, it doesn't work like that. And then 2018, by this stage I'd got all my exams. My bosses at that stage thought I was insane, the amount of dedication and the rigorous meal times, the training every evening. Everybody in the office thought I was insane, but it was my outlet. It was my enjoyment. You have to find with chartered accountancy exams, you are working 40 plus hours a week. You're studying 10, 20 plus hours a week, and then you need an outlet. And my outlet was just lifting things and putting them down because it was a nice, simple process. So 2018 then became Mr. Northern Ireland. And during that time, my career kept progressing. And I constantly strived to better my knowledge. My father worked in Grant Thornton for 30 plus years, and he was annoyed. There's no point in beating around the bush. He was annoyed because I left practice and I went into industry to actually work hands-on with directors and business owners and tried to look at streamlining processes. I wanted to build a relationship with a business and make it see it improve before my eyes. In practice back then, it was almost like a conveyor belt. Set of accounts came in, out the door. Set of accounts comes in, out the door. There was no relationship being built with the client. And then if a client rings you 6 months later with a bit of advice or asking for a bit of advice, it was, what do you think of this? And I'm a very honest person, so my answer always was, I haven't seen your books for X number of months. I possibly couldn't comment on that. You'd need to bring books in, but that was extra work and the bosses didn't like it. So I devised a plan through my experience out of practice, then went into industry, streamlined processes, actually built financial software and implemented it for a large engineering firm, international engineering firm. Went back into practice, and just again, there was gaps in the service that I seen, and it was mainly to do with my last boss said to me that I was spending too much time with clients. For profitability margins, 100% from a business perspective, I was spending too much time with clients. But I enjoyed that aspect of the business, and the clients enjoyed it. You've said it yourself. I like to reassure people, make people feel safe, not scared of accountancy, not scared of the tax man, and it's part of life. And because we're not educated on it throughout school, I think that's why the fear steps in. And it's the older guy in the pub or the older guy at business that you hear, oh, I hate the tax man. It's ingrained into you from the start. But there's no reason to hate them. It's just to work with them and make sure that you can navigate your business properly and make sure that you're setting things aside when you should, so it doesn't pop out of thin air and surprise you. In the UK, we get too long a deadline between finishing our accounts and our business year end compared to when you have to pay your tax. For example, a company has 9 months after the year end to pay its corporation tax bill, but the money's sitting in your bank account. And all too often, if it's sitting in your bank account, you're going to spend it. Unless you've got proper budgets and stipulations in place that you can't extract that money's set off to the side. So the bodybuilding side of things, it was actually a gentleman, Tom Hames, who coached me for my most recent show. I'm not going to say my last show. My most recent show in 2021. And I could just see Tom, the depth and the care that he took when he was engaging with clients, because I was a client of his. And I seen, Loom videos, engagement, no question was too big or small. And I knew naturally I was that sort of person as well. So I thought, why can I not mesh the likes of online coaching with the accountancy knowledge that I have and produce an accountability, a safe place to talk about your taxes, and a place that you're going to be fully informed about what's going on in your business. Only due to technology, being the likes of Xero or QuickBooks that links up to your bank account, have I been able to provide this service.
Yeah.
So there's so many aspects. I put a post up last week thanking people in the industry there's so many aspects that have come into play. And if you ask me how I got here, it's a bit of a haze in the sense of this just came in at the right time. This came in at the right time, and it all just started to mesh together quite nicely.
Well, a lot of success in entrepreneurship is being the right person with the right set of skills at the right time. And one of the classic parts of entrepreneurship is looking at something and going, we can do that better. Really simple.
Yeah.
For us, it's we can do therapy for performance better. Therapy is coping. A therapist is successful when the person's just stable.
Yeah.
That's not success for us. For us, success is when somebody's thriving, they feel authentic, they have space to breathe, they're getting shit done, and they're operating at a completely different league and a completely different level in terms of the individual. And that's what we saw. Yeah. And if you're in the right place, the right time, with the right set of skills and the right intentions, and ultimately deliver on your promise, then those businesses always fly. they always fly. But if you don't deliver on the promise, that's where things get stuck. And before I reached out to you to look at our stuff, I messaged Ben Hawksworth, Mark Rhodes, Dan Martin, our own TMP coach. Asked those three. There's a couple of others. And I said, "What's your take on James?" And straight away they went, "They make me feel safe. They make me feel easy. Yep, they're complete managed service." And you can't beat that. You can't market a service or an outcome that isn't there. You can. You get a lot of sign-ups early, but then it all starts to drop off. And that's something that you've done really, really well. I'd love to talk about the difference between money mindset issues and financial clarity. And I think I've actually sent quite a few people your way in relation to when we start to realize that they don't necessarily have a money mindset issue. Their relationship with money isn't emotional. It's actually a financial clarity issue. Well, that's a completely different ballgame. And if we look at money mindset, if we look at the emotional relationship with money, often it's one of scarcity, fear. If you come from a background where nobody's had any money, well, then all of a sudden you've got cash, but you don't know what to do with it. That can be quite scary. Guilt and shame can come up if you've had the message. If you've had the message as a kid, money doesn't grow on trees, or do you think we're made of money? That can inherently lead to shame and guilt for asking for something. So coaches that are struggling with putting their prices up or asking for sales, sometimes there's an emotional component that's going into that. And if you can actually start to work through those puzzles and start to let those go, fuck me, does life begin to change. And you start to look at money just like James does. James will look at money as, well, the numbers are here, the numbers are here. We can make some decisions here, and that's going to be, it's not going to be very emotional. It's very strategic and logical. Whereas if you're caught up in emotion, you're going to be looking at it and you're going to start creating stories around the financial picture that simply aren't true. So you must get that all the time with coaches panicking, stressing, with all of that noise. But let's cut straight into the clarity. What three numbers does every single coach and entrepreneur need to know? In fact, can I tell you mine? And I'd love you to challenge my assumption. You can say, no, bullshit, you're wrong.
Yep, that'll be a good idea.
Let's test this. First one I always say to coaches they need to understand is their profit and loss. Are they profitable? Are they making money? Are they not money? The second one is runway. So do they have enough cash in the bank to sustain 3 to 6 months worth of earnings? And then finally, the third number, profit and loss, runway. I would say the third one is financial forecasting, so the ability to predict into the future roughly how much is going to happen. Those are the three that I'd pick. If I've stolen the thunder, tell me. If you're like, Kieran, you've missed this one, this is the one. But run through those as well.
So definitely profit foremost, you know, but it's looking at the risk areas of the business. There's so much more than just the three, but I would say profit. Profit is king. You know, you could be a cash generating business, but non-profitable. But within the fitness industry, cash is profit. You get money in, you pay money out for your services. It's not like your typical industry where you have contracts, supplier term payments, debtor payment terms to yourself, and that profit is very vastly different to your actual cash. So to work with online fitness businesses and gyms and shops, you know, that it's cash in, cash out, you need to be very aware of these figures. So first and foremost, everyone in the industry is obsessed with turnover.
They love to scream, I've done a 10K month.
Yeah, but somebody that's doing a 12K month could be spending 5,000 or 6,000 to generate those sales, and then their profit be 4 or 5K. Somebody doing 8K a month that feels insecure because they're seeing somebody else scream about doing 12, 15, 20. They feel insecure because they're not doing that. But it's the profit that's important. That 8K person could be doing £1,000 in expenses and be more profitable. Yeah. So that's the thing that whenever I get into groups of people, I'm always about, do you know what your profit is? So you hit it on the head. My first question always is, what's your profit? And if somebody doesn't know, then that gives me an angle to say, well, we can show you that each and every month. You know, it's not difficult. It's cash in, cash out. That's your profit. The next most important thing that I would say is distributable profit after tax. So the problem is £8,000 sitting in a bank account is not all of your money. And then we can get into very technical areas, the difference between a sole trade in the UK and a company in the UK. The company is a separate legal entity, and it owns the cash, it owns the bank, it owns everything to do with the business, and you are appointed as a director to run that business, but you have to take money out in a structured way. And then you can get into issues like overdrawn directors' loan accounts. You've taken too much money out of this separate legal entity that is supposed to operate in a profitable manner and can afford to pay its taxes. If you extract too much money out of that, you get into problems, additional taxes. So we try to make sure for our clients that we see sales, expenses, profit after tax, and this is what you can take. I downplay it quite a bit, but it's like a bona fide pay slip. Everybody that's employment gets their gross pay minus their taxes, and they get paid into their bank account what they know they can spend. So profit after tax would potentially be even more important than profit, because you need to know that that's not my money, that's the government's money. And again, as I said earlier, you don't pay that for X number of months, so you can actually move that into like interest accounts or fixed term accounts to be able to grow money off the back of it and make a slight, it's not going to change your life, but if you can mitigate, if you could reduce your tax bill by £200 every year and you run a business for 30 years, it's quite a significant amount of money. It's all about compounding when it comes to numbers. Even it's no different than fat loss. It's no different than weight gain. You're not going to gain 20 kilo of muscle overnight. You're not going to lose 20 pound of fat overnight. It's the same with tax savings. It's the same with looking at your portfolio into the future. This can get into the realms of financial advisory work, but little and often always beats one big hell for leather attempt at it. And the earlier these guys are, the great thing is the typical business life is quite a long time, 18 to 67 years old. But you start to earn the upper limits of your pay scale in the later years of your life. You start very low, but the fitness industry has given our guys the ability to earn very high at the start, which means that if you put that into interests and investments and savings accounts and pensions and ISAs that come into play, that has so much longer to grow. So my guys, I hope to goodness, won't be panicking when they come 50 years old, 45 years old and think, I'm going to retire in the next 10 years and I don't have a penny into investments. So that's another bit of clarity we give. But in terms of the numbers, I would say sales is important because of the risk behind the sales. A big shift in the market that we have noticed is it was all upfront sale. But the guys that I was talking to admitted they became salesmen. They were chasing their tail constantly to hit those targets. They run their Stripe reports, they run their Go Cardless reports, and if they weren't hitting that target, it then caused anxiety. But they weren't focusing on their profit, which was the most important thing. So I've seen a big shift in the market towards monthly recurring revenue, which is more structured and more stable, because if you're selling something at £2,000 a month sales wise every single month, and you do 10 sales, 20 grand that month, that's fantastic. But there's a chance you might make no sales the next month. Whereas if you had brought those 20 clients on at £200 a month, there's a steady stream of revenue to come in over a prolonged period of time, because again, the £20,000 came in and the tax wasn't set to the side and it was spent. And then if your business starts a trajectory of that and you don't set aside your taxes, and the following year when you're supposed to pay your tax bill, you've been spending that, you then are down here compared to here, and you can't afford to pay the tax bill for the prior year. And that's why when we get people on, we do a full clean of the system and a full clean of the business to go, right, let's see what you owed in the prior year. Let's see what you need to set aside for the current year. Is this manageable? Right now it's not, but let's budget forward. This is what you need to set aside on a monthly basis so you can catch up with yourself. So knowing your tax numbers, I would say, is the second one. Profit and your tax numbers. The next thing would be break-even point, in my opinion. What does it cost to run your business? And it's a very simple calculation, and a lot of people thankfully are aware of this sort of thing, and I don't even think they're aware that it's such a good business metric to use. I charge £200 for my service. This service costs £800 per month. So I need 4 clients to cover that.
Correct, yeah.
And if you work off something as simple as that for everything you're buying, you'll know whenever you're making your profit margins. If your entire business takes 10 clients to run it, then if you've got 30 clients, the clarity comes into play. The anxiousness can be taken away. You don't need to be that panicky until you start getting down to this number of clients. So that's what we try to implement with our guys as well, is know your break even point. To know when it's time to panic and when it's time to go, okay, I can relax and I can refocus my energy on the business. So a lot of what we do, yourself and I, it's about taking the stress away. It's about making sure that the guys can operate on their business at optimal levels instead of wasting energy on things they don't need to panic about.
Well, yeah, it's the difference between the clarity, which is why whenever I see coaches or entrepreneurs, they're running through and they're scared. We do the emotional work on, okay, well, why are you scared of the numbers? And it's always one or two things. One is literally just fear of money, guilt and shame around money, limiting beliefs and all of that. But then the second part is clarity. So once we clear that out, that's when I say go chat to James or go find somebody that can give you that. Because if you don't have financial clarity, you're always going to be anxious. You're always going to be worried. If you don't know your key numbers, if you don't know whether you're profitable or not profitable, if you don't know whether you've got runway, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked. And the amount of coaches I know that deliberately bury their head in the sand, even when I tell them not to bury their head in the sand, because they don't want to go near them. Because either A, they're afraid of what they might find, B, they don't want to face the music, they don't want to face the facts, or C, they just don't want to do the actual work required in order to get that clarity and get that information. And until you make those shifts and realize that there's nothing to be scared of, numbers are just inherently numbers, and once you start to understand the core basics, then you'll start to relax a hell of a lot more around money.
I think I completely agree with the statement about it's quite funny because it was very alien to me because I've been working with business owners in a typical old accountancy practice that they wanted in to speak to the accountant, they wanted to see their numbers, they wanted to do that, but they were talking to the partner levels, at their year ends. And when people were coming on for a consult with me saying, I've put this off for too long, I was scared. That's when I wanted to start getting the message out in social media that it's not, you should never be scared to speak to your accountant because ultimately he's the guy that's supposed to help you with your numbers, your tax, your figures, payment plans that you can set up with HMRC. If you are in catastrophic tax debt, there is systems and measures you can put in place. And if people can take away one thing from these videos, it's everything can be rectified. Everything. I used to remember working in industry and my accounts clerks were always panicky if something went wrong, and it's simple to change it. The accounts haven't been signed yet, so let's put mechanisms in place to fix what you've done. And normally in those circumstances, it was a simple journal. But when you've got yourself into tax difficulties, it's about budgeting. It's about facing the music. It's about putting the work in. It's about booking in with me on a monthly basis to go, this is what's happened. This is what we said was going to happen. And we're on the right trajectory or we're on the wrong one and we need to readjust to get you back online. And it does take effort. I do know that some people would think, surely you're supposed to do it all for me, but it's like anything, and this is what I describe it to the online coaches. You teach your guys to check in with you because if they didn't check in, you couldn't adjust their diet, you couldn't help them meet their targets. It's the same with my style of service. If you don't check in with me, there's no possible way. Yes, I've got your facts and your figures in front of me, but I need to know how you're feeling right now. Are you anxious about the business? Can we maybe look and forecast, as you said earlier, 6 months into the future and give you clarity and satisfaction to know if you done zero in sales for the next 6 months, you could still pay your overheads, pay your personal expenditure, and you can then continue to grow the business. And that's a figure that I always love to give to people, especially the much larger businesses. You would be surprised at how many of them panic about the future. But the panic then, if it doesn't cripple them, it keeps them stronger because they're just constantly trying to do better than the last yesterday.
Yeah, well, part of it's being emotionally hijacked. And if you're spending... So a lot of what we do at TMP is emotion optimization. So if you have a fear or anxiety that's happening all the time, that directly impacts your ability to make good decisions. And every entrepreneur lives or dies by the decisions that they make. So if you're in an emotional state and you're constantly anxious or worried about the finances, about money, your decision making in those moments are going to be a lot less sharp. So how do you work through that, do the emotional work to let go of, well, where does that root of fear come from? And that's just getting the clarity. And once you've got the clarity of, well, I'm inherently financially safe, the team is inherently financially safe, and actually I don't need to feel unsafe around money, I don't need to feel unsafe around those conversations, everything's fine, you will skyrocket, because your ability to make decisions and move forward and just spend that same energy you would spend worrying on being creative and getting shit done, that moves the needle forward so much faster.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because the ones that worry, their first instance now is don't worry about it for 3 days, a week, a month, until the end of the year. They text me straight away. And it's kind of scary to know how much control I have over people's money mindset now. That, you know, these guys are doing fantastic, but they're coming to me to go, is my business in a healthy place? Can we forecast forward for 6 months? Yes, we bloody can, because we've got real-time information, and then we can throw it forward. You want to invest in a new subcontract coach, you want to invest in a new advertising stream, you want to invest in TMP. Let's see what that does to your figures. We have your actual figures forecasted forward. If sales remain the same and we slot this expense in, I love facts and figures because they're facts. They can't, unless something catastrophic happens to the sales, unless you can tell me you're going to increase your sales by 100% and you don't, and it's an unrealistic goal, which we would also pull in the line. It should happen. If the effort, the time, if you show up, the projection should happen, and therefore that's the clarity that we give clients. It's, if you meet these KPIs, these key performance indicators, the sales go to the trajectory that we've discussed, the expenses come down or the expenses increase, your profit margins will still remain the same. So it's one of the most satisfying things, and that's the reason that I set up my own business. Was I was sick of lack of job satisfaction. Whereas I've seen people that have come to me with no insight into their business, no pension pot set up, no investment set up, and we've been able to give them a good detailed structure to be able to have meetings with financial advisors and say, financial advisor will always ask, what can you afford to invest? And a lot of business owners constantly are like, it's a guess. Whereas with our structure, they know definitively what they can afford. And then we can work the pension in for tax contribution, tax deductions. The ISA comes out, but how does that impact your personal tax in the UK if you're taking money out of a company structure? And there was a couple of scenarios that we noticed. Guys were living off over the lower threshold of tax rates and then putting money into an ISA, but they were suffering 33.75% of tax. So when we looked at that, I was saying, your ISA pot will have to grow by 33.75% to meet the expense of taking it out of your business to invest it.
Do you think the UK tax system is the most complex in the world or not?
I did until we started to move into America. And America is a whole different ballgame because they have state tax, they have federal tax, they have, even within New York, for example, New York has different tax regimes in each district.
Fucking hell.
It is absolutely insane.
Wow.
And I've spoke to a lot of accountants in America that actually they will not take clients on in certain areas.
Because it's too complex.
Too complex, and it's too much information. At the end of the day, is it complex or is there just too much to think about? You know, we've partnered with tax specialists, so we have an on-hand 24/7 phone call, email number that if we're unsure on something, because at the end of the day, we're not a big PwC practice. So I needed to put measures in place in our practice that if we had to go to somebody for a little additional help, you've seen it, we've done it, you know, you can get, it's there. Even within a practice of our size, the support network's there.
Do you think in Europe, the UK is the most complex or not?
Ireland's pretty simple. UK, I wouldn't know what France and Germany are like and the other European countries, but I know obviously I used to work in Newry on the border between the north and the south. Personal tax in the Republic of Ireland is quite complex, but company accounts are quite simple. And then the UK, the personal tax is quite simple, but the company tax expenditures and the tax loopholes and the inheritance tax that comes into play, it's all very, and that's why you have specialists in each area. You will actually have in an office, in a large practice, the inheritance tax specialist. You'll have the personal tax expert. You'll have the corporation tax expert, the VAT tax expert. Like PwC, the biggest practice in the world, has specific departments. You'll find a chartered accountant has trained in a large practice and come out, but they'll only have ever worked on VAT.
Because they're a specialist, they're a cog
Yes.
in the machine. Because I look at these tax systems, and now that I'm in Dubai,
I am jealous.
it's just, and a lot of people say, oh, you're only out there because of tax. No, I'm genuinely happy out there. Like, it works for me.
Yeah.
For me, if you move somewhere just because of tax, you probably haven't got a good enough life.
It's a bit like paying somebody a salary to do a job they don't like.
Yeah,
You won't stay there.
Yeah, I can't get behind that. But for where I'm at, for where TMP's at, it works. It just fits like a glove. And what happens is, and if there's any coaches that are looking to move out to Dubai, just be aware that you will become tax lazy. And what I mean by that is you will forget about all of that. So there's now corporation tax that's just come in.
Yep.
That's 9%, I believe.
9%, yeah, they've released it.
But that's it.
Yep.
And it's really simple. It's 9% of profit.
Yep. And it depends, again, in the UAE, the tax jurisdictions, the tax-free zones, each one has a different mechanism.
Yeah, that's right.
We have had to look at this. If you spoke to me on this podcast a year and a half ago and you mentioned the UAE, I'd start to clam up.
Yeah.
I'd start to sweat. But we've had to look into this, and more from a perspective of expats leaving the UK to go to the UAE. And now we've got connections in the UAE to do the UAE accounts. And you have to remember, every set of accounts in the UAE needs audited. Not every set of accounts audit needs to be submitted. But if they come to look, they want to make sure that every set of accounts is audited.
That's new.
Yep.
That's completely new, because before, when I first arrived in the UAE, nearly 3 years ago now, it was pretty much do what you want.
Yeah, it was lax.
There's no personal tax, and there still is no personal tax. That's coming.
Yes.
That's happening. But there was none of that. Corporation tax, none of that. And I remember saying to when I first got the company registered, so do I need to have like all my accounts all done, ready? Do I need to be keeping expenses? They said no.
Yeah.
No, you don't need that. They're growing up really quickly. But it's so fascinating, because what you'll find is when you move out of that environment and then you come back and then you hear, oh no, I actually was writing down, me and a friend of mine were playing a game, we were writing down a list of all the different taxes in England at dinner. And it's only a matter of time before you get an air tax, because you can now get tax to breathe. Like, it's unbelievable when you actually just look at that list, and it can be quite overwhelming. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur and you're going to be a coach, just find the experts. Just simplify. Don't try and cheap out, because it just doesn't work. Find the experts and just fucking do it.
I was very, very fortunate in the practice that I trained in was ASM, one of the large practices in Northern Ireland and Ireland. But I was in a nice, smaller styled office in Newry, and we got our hands in on everything. The first year you were doing basic bookkeeping. The second year you were looking at generating sets of accounts for sole traders and small companies. You were doing payroll, you were doing VAT returns. There's a lot of professionals haven't had that luxury to have had a chance at everything and then choose what you want to do, or just we have implemented in our structure the tax experts. I'm not a chartered tax consultant. That's something I would like to educate myself on. But for now, we have our tax specialists on hand. And that's why I like to make sure our practice is bulletproof in that sense, that if we need to ask those sorts of questions, we have it on hand. My father was ex-audit partner in Grant Thornton for years. Well, he's ex-audit partner now, and he was a director of assurance, one of the top 4 practices in the world. So I have him on hand for business structuring advice and, does this look right? Does this sit right with you? Does this make sense? And I'm very, very fortunate to have that in the background, and our clients are very fortunate to have that in the background. But as you said earlier, the tax system in the UAE, and when you moved out 3 years ago, don't worry about keeping your receipts, don't worry about keeping your expenses. But how do you track your business's trajectory if you don't keep that in a structure? A lot of people in the UK are really annoyed that they have to do a set of sole trade accounts or company accounts, but it should be a beneficial thing. You should think of it from, I can actually see what I've done.
It's data and patterns, so you can start to look back and go, hang on, how much are you spending per month in marketing? Okay, is that generating a 5 to 10x return on investment? It's not. What the fuck are you spending your marketing budget on? Okay, you're spending far too much on dinners taking clients out. You spent a fucking fortune.
Yep.
That is all super, super important, and people forget that it's in the data. The data tells the story. The data you can start to understand. Okay, well, is this working or is this not? Something even one of my best mates, he was making an investment in his business, and in return for not having to pay as much, he was exchanging some hours. And I said to him, okay, well, is that moving the needle forward? Yeah, well, kind of this, kind of that. And I said, show me the fucking numbers. Show me the numbers as it hasn't generated a return. Yeah, but they said that this is going to change. Let's do it. 3 months later. All right, has it done a 5 to 10x return on investment? No, it hasn't. They're lying to you.
Yep.
Or you're not doing it properly. No, I've executed it. Show me. They showed me everything. They've executed to the T. That information is wrong because the outcome is you would have 5 to 10 extra investment. Hasn't worked. Yeah. And it can be as simple as that. And when you get really clear on what the metrics for success are in any investment, and this is what I'd love to jump onto now, is just financial decision making. You will live and die by your financial decisions. And you kind of have to pay, sometimes you have to pay an inexperience tax, which is you're not experienced in a field, you're not sure if it's going to work, you spend a load of money, it doesn't work. And then this is where coaches and entrepreneurs can fuck things up because they start beating themselves up for making a bad decision versus looking at that as a piece of data and going, my assumption was this. Yeah, my assumption was this. It wasn't the outcome. Okay, sunk cost, move on. They start trying to claw it back or like, oh, we'll try and fit this in where it doesn't really fit. You're better off learning to cut the umbilical cord with shit financial decisions and moving on and accepting that you're going to lose money in business, and that's okay. Nobody goes through business and doesn't make shit financial decisions, but that's just part of your personal algorithm that you then build up to learn, this is how I make better decisions. If there's one piece of advice you'd give to coaches and entrepreneurs and how they can make better financial decisions, what would you give them?
Track data. Like bodybuilders, online coaches, even if you've never been a bodybuilder, you track data for your clients. You get your clients to check in, track data, track macros, track macronutrients, calories, and it becomes it's second nature to do it for that. But as soon as I mention, are you tracking your profit? People crumble. It's crazy the anxiety that numbers cause people. As you say, there's a deep-seated fear of money. I've had none of it when I was a kid, and now I have so much of it I don't know what to do with it. So you spend it to nearly get rid of it. It's people like punish themselves for having the money in their bank account. Yeah. And then I get all walks of life, the extremes. I get one side of it where this guy spends all his money, every penny of it, and there's nothing left. And then
you got a hoarder.
Hoarding cash. Hoarder.
Yeah.
But they're doing themselves no favors because it was sitting in a stagnant bank account. I sat with them and I was like, there was 3 measures here. I was like, you could have reinvested this in your business. You could have invested it in a separate vehicle for long-term personal wealth. The third most important thing was you could have been having a bit of fun. Like, why beat your ass in, day out, not know your numbers and not know what money you can spend on fun? That's a big, big thing that we look at. And as you ask the question, what is the fundamental thing people can do to get rid of your anxiety, to get rid of your fear around money, is track the bloody thing. If you knew exactly what your sales were, what your expenses were, what your profit was, be told each month this is what you can afford to take out of your business. If you're a sole trader, the money's yours. If you're a company and the profit after tax is sitting there, take this out. It's a simple calculation to know I've took this amount out, I can set this amount aside for taxes. Have I met that threshold yet? Oh, well, let's just go back to the data that I was tracking or my accountant was tracking for me. Oh, your accountant should be telling you, you're going to break that threshold. You're going to go from 8.75% extraction dividend taxes to 33.75%. That's a 25% increase. So the fact that most of our businesses that are doing between 100 and 200K, I'm very, very big on, don't live over 50,270. Because if you take £10,000 out more than 50,270, it costs you more tax than it did to lift 50,000 out. So track your data, know what you're doing. If you want to spend a wee bit more, know you have to suffer the taxes. You have to play within the laws. If you want to sleep it, that's one of the biggest joys that I got was everyone that comes to us wants to do it right, doesn't want to, hide things, doesn't want to do anything. And in fact, some of them are too lax. I had a message the other day, it was for a laptop. And I was like, I don't have the receipt for that. I suppose just post it to drawings. And I said, no, we don't need to. It says Curry's in the bank statement. Go down to Curry, show them the payment date, get the receipt. And I said, in fact, did you buy that online? And they were like, yes, go into your emails, type in Curry's. Our client didn't even know that an email receipt still shows that you've bought it and know what it is. So that counts as backup to what the transaction was for. Because the unfortunate thing is, if Curry see, or if HMRC see Curry's on their bank statement, they don't know if it's for a fridge. They don't know if it's for a microwave.
I don't know if it's for a curry.
Valid point. They don't know. But nowadays, it's a lot easier. Bank statements just used to have a number of digits.
I'm going to be honest, mate. The UAE, I think you've probably seen some of our UAE bank statements are ridiculous.
They're like the old UK system.
Yeah. So if it's a bank card payment, it will say the merchant. Great. If I personally send you money, it's a unique number.
Yep.
And then we have to go back through the data manually and infer, that's the monthly payment that goes to this consultant. That's this here. And it's a fucking absolute nightmare. We've managed to figure it out so we can at least put a name in the
reference.
Yeah, in the debit reference and the credit reference and whatever. But even so, that sucks. But you do need that data.
The funny thing about the UAE tax system and the accounting system, KPMG, I believe it was employed by the UAE authorities to implement the tax system. So you'll find the VAT system is nearly a carbon copy of the VAT system in the UK. You'll find that the banking systems are carbon copies of the banking systems in the UK 20 years ago.
That's exactly what it is. Our UK business was banking with Starling. Fucking amazing.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely incredible. Like you can attribute like it gives you all the data. You can actually manually attribute things. Amazing. Really good. And then I got to the UAE and I opened our bank and that took 6 weeks to open a fucking bank account. It took 6 weeks of going back and forth and signing documents and no, you need to go and get this license and now it was an absolute nightmare. And I'm not going to say the name of my bank because I can get done for defamation. And that's a serious thing in the UAE. But just the systems that
it's very archaic. Like
it's just like going back in time 20 years. Like actually, if you log into the platform, it feels like I'm in the 90s or in the noughties.
Because it's built off the old software.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as soon as they want to improve something, it'll be improved overnight.
Well, they tend to, the challenge they've got is legacy systems.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. I spoke to one financial consultant and he does all the tech, and one company, I won't say, lost $50 million worth of loans because it was all being held on spreadsheets. That was 2 years ago. Like honestly, it's a different. Yeah, so some people were still paying off their loans. Some people, the payments weren't coming out.
Yeah.
Because they'd lost it. Like that
would be an auditor's dream.
That's just a different.
But you remember, like even 20 years ago, we were doing things handwritten in the UK. 20 years ago, I remember working in ASM in 2013. So that would be 10 years ago, and I seen documentation from 10 years before that. So that's how quickly technology has progressed in the UK. The likes of Zero Software.
I would listen. If I could use all the same UK software for what we have, mate, it would save so much time. And if you're a UK coach listening to this, recognize that you can get hold of the data so much quicker, so much faster, so much easier, and manage this stuff. That's a big thing. One thing you mentioned about is getting all of the data, getting all of the numbers, having the systems in place to do that. So there will be some coaches, and you'll have some clients where even though they have that in place, they're still scared. They still feel guilt and shame. They're still hoarding and whatever. If you are a coach that has all of the systems in place, you know exactly your profit and loss, you know exactly your break-even point, your revenue, your sales, you know all of that, and you're still worried about the numbers, chances are there is an emotional connection to money that hasn't been worked through. And that might be guilt or shame. I'm not worthy of keeping it. Who am I to make this sort of money? Maybe it's scarcity, fear of loss. It's going to go, I'm going to lose it all. Maybe it's imposter syndrome. I shouldn't really have it. I don't really deserve it. So if you have all of the systems in place, and you're aware of your numbers, yet you're still emotionally charged around that topic, that is evidence to go and do the deeper emotional work, do the inner child work to understand where was that belief born and how you can begin to unlock that. And if you do that, you'll be so much more calm, so much more relaxed, and your financial decision making and your decision making as a business owner will completely take things to another level. That's what I've noticed, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that as well.
See, I was brought up in a background of, like, my father was an audit partner, but no matter what, I remember my mother would have, and it's just the wee voice in the back of my head, no, we can't afford that. no, we can't afford that. So it embedded a sense of safety around money. Now, it was not detrimental in any way, but we are very careful with our money. In fact, our family name, my mother's side of the family name, would be known to be very careful people with their money. You know, and I think it's genetic, it's hereditary, it's ingrained into us from a very young age. Look after your money, and it's not a bad thing. But I remember whenever I started, you know, running a house, paying for my own bills, it was pure panic. It was that money I was trying to be careful with. People are taking it away from me. But then understanding the value of money is technically nothing. You know, cash actually has no true value. It is
Representational value.
yes. Back in the day, it was a bartering system. It was, I have milk, you have chickens. Give me eggs, I'll give you milk. I have cows, you got chickens. I'm going to kill a cow, give me a couple of chickens, I'll give you a side of beef. You know, and then the monetary value started coming in this. Instead of swapping, like, you know, items for other items, that's when cash started to come into play, and there was a monetary value set on items, services, products, and it was just a universal way to pay for things. And inflation, interest, how does my money grow? It's all very, you're getting into economics whenever you start talking about that, and I'm no way an expert on that.
And
But
even going into philosophy, like philosophically, what is value? What is a value exchange? What is fair? What is not fair? Mate, we could do this for absolutely hours, and we'll shoot another podcast next time I'm in Northern Ireland or in London.
Awesome.
Or if you've got any plans to be in the UAE, then just let me know and we'll
plan
shoot.
on coming out some
We'll
stage,
shoot
but I've been
something.
told not to come out before
No, don't come
September.
out, mate. You step outside. Your t-shirt soaked.
Yeah.
Like I call it the microwave. You're stepping into the microwave. It's no bueno. But mate, thank you so much for coming to the podcast, mate. The dedication in relation to James. I said, hey mate, I'm going to be here at this date. I don't know if you can make it or not. He said, I'll move everything to be there. And he just got on the plane. He's here and he's going to fly back. So mate, I really appreciate that.
No,
the
my
time
absolute
and
honour to
energy.
be asked.
Where can everyone find you?
Everyone can find me on Instagram. It's FitPro Financial, and it's literally just FitPro Financial, and everything will be there. My website links, my calendar links. The website gives good testimonials. The Instagram gives good testimonials, and it gives good description about what we do. And if you're interested and you know we work with somebody, speak to them about us, because that's something I pride myself on, is the reputation. You know, it is about helping people. And as you said earlier, you can't stay in the UAE just for the tax purposes if you don't like it. And you can't be paid to stay in a job you don't like. And our clients stay because they see value in what we give. It's not like your typical accountancy practice where you're supposed to save me tax. It's not just about saving tax. It's about adding value, getting the clarity over the figures, and seeing, is this going to go up or down, and how do we mitigate the risk of it going down?
James, mate, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Guys, if you find this helpful, please add it to your stories. Please tag us both, and we're looking to put this podcast out into the world. I know this podcast is going to change so many lives. So, mate, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, buddy.
Feel free to get in touch with James directly. I cannot recommend the guy highly enough. Just both what he showed with us so far, and also with all of our other clients as well. I've not had a single person say a bad thing, and in this industry, that's
nice to hear.
evidence of
Thank you.
delivering. So, James, big love, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.